The thundering sound of hooves echoed against the canyon walls as the stagecoach barreled down the narrow path, dust billowing behind it like a storm cloud. Birdie Ravenwood clutched the leather seat beneath her, knuckles white as the vehicle hit another bump that sent her nearly flying from her perch. The year was 1878, and the Arizona Territory was as wild and untamed as the wind that now howled through the canyon, growing stronger with each passing minute. "We need to slow down," Birdie shouted to the driver above, her voice nearly lost in the rushing wind. Her traveling companion, an older woman named Martha Holloway, gripped her arm with surprising strength. "Lord have mercy," Martha whispered, her face pale beneath the brim of her bonnet. "I don't think he can hear you, dear." The stagecoach rattled dangerously, wheels catching on the uneven ground as the wind grew more ferocious. Birdie could see the driver struggling with the reins, the four horses pulling the coach becoming increasingly agitated by the howling gusts that funneled through the narrow passage. She had left Boston 3 weeks ago, determined to forge her own path as a schoolteacher in the small town of Copper Springs. At 22, she had grown tired of the stifling expectations of her family, of the endless parade of suitors her mother presented to her. The West represented freedom, opportunity, and perhaps a bit of the adventure she'd read about in dime novels secretly tucked beneath her pillow. Now, as the stagecoach lurched and swayed beneath her, Birdie wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. A powerful gust slammed into the side of the coach, and Birdie heard the driver shout something unintelligible. The horses whinnied in terror. She felt the coach tilt, slowly at first, then with terrifying momentum. "Hold on," she screamed to Martha, grabbing the older woman's hand. The world turned sideways, then upside down. Birdie's head struck something hard, and for a moment all she knew was darkness and the sound of splintering wood. When she opened her eyes, she was lying at an awkward angle, her body pressed against the side of the coach that now rested on its roof. Pain radiated from her temple, and she touched it gingerly, her fingers coming away with blood. "Mrs. Holloway," she called out, her voice shaking. "Martha," a weak moan answered her from somewhere nearby. The interior of the coach was dim, shafts of dusty light filtering through the windows that weren't pressed against the ground. Birdie could see Martha's crumpled form a few feet away. "I'm here, child," Martha answered, her voice strained, "though I believe my leg is broken." Birdie tried to move toward her but froze when the coach creaked ominously around them. Outside, she could hear the panicked sounds of the horses and the wind still howling through the canyon. "Help," she called out. "Is anyone there? The driver, please?" Only the wind answered. Birdie swallowed hard, forcing down her panic. She needed to get out to find help for Martha. Carefully, she began to maneuver toward what had been the door, now above them. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made her pause. Someone was coming. Relief flooded through her. "Hello." A deep voice called from outside. "Anyone alive in there?" "Yes," Birdie shouted. "Two of us. Please help." She heard the thud of boots hitting the ground, then footsteps circling the overturned coach. A shadow fell across one of the windows, and she caught a glimpse of a man's face peering in. "Hang on," the voice called. "I'm going to get you out." The door above them creaked, then groaned as it was forced open. Sunlight poured in, momentarily blinding Birdie. When her vision cleared, she saw a man silhouetted against the bright sky, his hat pushed back on his head. "Can you climb up?" he asked, extending a hand down toward her. "My companion is injured," Birdie replied, gesturing toward Martha. "I think her leg is broken." The man nodded. "I'll come down for her." He disappeared from view for a moment, then reappeared, lowering himself carefully through the doorway. His boots hit the roof of the overturned coach with a soft thud. In the better light, Birdie could see him clearly now. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a face tanned and weathered by the sun. His hair, revealed as he removed his hat, was dark and slightly too long, curling at the nape of his neck. A fine layer of dust covered his denim pants and cotton shirt, and a gun belt was strapped securely around his hips. "Xavier Quinn," he introduced himself, giving her a quick nod. "Most folks call me Xav." "Birdie Ravenwood," she replied automatically, her Boston manners asserting themselves even in this predicament. "And this is Martha Holloway." Xavier knelt beside the older woman, examining her with gentle hands. "Madam," he said respectfully, "where does it hurt?" "My left leg, young man," Martha replied, her face tight with pain. "And I believe my shoulder as well." He nodded grimly. "We need to get you both out of here. This coach isn't stable and there's a storm brewing." He glanced at Birdie. "I'll take her up first, then come back for you." With surprising gentleness for a man his size, Xavier carefully lifted Martha, mindful of her injuries. Birdie watched as he maneuvered the older woman through the doorway, disappeared for a few minutes, then returned. "Your turn, Miss Ravenwood," he said, extending his hand. Birdie reached up, placing her hand in his. His palm was calloused but warm, his grip secure as he helped her climb through the doorway. Outside, she blinked in the harsh sunlight, taking in the scene. The stagecoach lay on its roof, one wheel still spinning lazily. The horses had broken free of their harnesses and were nowhere to be seen. And the driver? Her heart sank as she spotted a still form a few yards away. "The driver?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Xavier's expression was grim. "Broke his neck in the fall." Nothing to be done for him now. Martha was sitting propped against a boulder, her face ashen. "What happens now, Mr. Quinn?" she asked weakly. "My ranch is about 5 miles from here," he replied. "I'll take you both there. My housekeeper can help tend to your injuries while we wait for the doctor." He looked up at the darkening sky. "We need to move quickly. That storm's coming in fast." He whistled, and a beautiful palomino trotted over, seemingly unperturbed by the wind that was still gusting through the canyon. "Ladies first," Xavier said, helping Martha onto the horse. "Miss Ravenwood, can you ride?" Birdie nodded. "I can." "Good." He helped her up behind Martha. "Hold on to her, make sure she doesn't fall. I'll walk alongside." "What about our luggage?" Birdie asked, suddenly remembering the trunks that contained everything she owned. "I'll send my ranch hands back for it once the storm passes," Xavier promised. "Right now, we need to get you both to safety." With that, he took the reins and began leading the horse away from the wreckage, one hand steady on Martha's back to keep her stable. As they walked, Birdie couldn't help but study their rescuer. There was something reassuring about his quiet confidence, the steady way he moved despite the howling wind that threatened to knock them all off balance. "You're not from around here," Xavier observed after they'd been walking for a while. "Is it that obvious?" Birdie asked. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "The accent gives you away. Boston." "Yes," she admitted. "I'm to be the new schoolteacher in Copper Springs." He nodded. "Small world, that's where I was headed when I found you. I have business with the general store owner there." Martha, who had been silent, suddenly slumped forward. Xavier reacted instantly, stopping the horse and reaching up to steady her. "She's losing consciousness," he said, his voice tight with concern. "We need to move faster." He looked at Birdie. "Can you hold her steady if I pick up the pace?" "Yes," Birdie promised, tightening her grip around Martha's waist. Xavier's expression grew determined. "Hold on tight." He swung himself up onto the horse behind Birdie, his chest pressing against her back as he reached around her to take the reins. "Dancer can carry all 3 of us for a short distance." With a click of his tongue, he urged the palomino into a trot, then a canter. Birdie felt herself pressed between Martha's limp form and the solid warmth of Xavier's chest. Despite the circumstances, she felt heat rise to her cheeks at the impropriety of it all. What would her mother say if she could see her now? The first drops of rain began to fall as the canyon widened, giving way to rolling grassland. In the distance, Birdie could make out a collection of buildings that must be Xavier's ranch. "Almost there," he said, his breath warm against her ear. "Just hold on a little longer." By the time they reached the ranch, the rain was falling in sheets. Xavier dismounted quickly, lifting Martha down first, then helping Birdie. A woman rushed out onto the porch of the main house, her eyes widening at the sight of them. "Xav, what in heaven's name stagecoach accident, Rosa?" he explained quickly, carrying Martha toward the house. "This one's hurt bad. Send Tom for the doctor." The woman Rosa nodded and hurried inside. Xavier followed with Martha, and Birdie trailed behind them, shivering in her wet clothes. The interior of the house was warm and surprisingly welcoming. A fire crackled in a stone hearth, and the furniture, though simple, was well made and comfortable looking. Xavier carried Martha to a bedroom off the main living area and gently laid her on the bed. Rosa appeared with towels and a basin of water. "The boy's gone for doctor." "Miller," she said, her accent revealing her Mexican heritage. "What happened?" As Xavier explained about the stagecoach, Rosa efficiently removed Martha's boots and began tending to her injuries. Birdie stood in the doorway, feeling helpless and increasingly aware of her own aching head and bruised body. "Miss Ravenwood," Xavier said, turning to her, "you're hurt too. Let Rosa look at that cut on your temple." "I'm fine," Birdie insisted, though the room had started to spin slightly. "Please, take care of Mrs. Holloway first." Xavier's expression softened. "You're swaying on your feet." He stepped closer, his hand gentle on her elbow. "Come, sit down before you fall down." He led her to a chair near the fire in the main room, then poured water from a pitcher into a basin. Taking a clean cloth, he dampened it and gently pressed it to the cut on her temple. Birdie winced at the sting. "Sorry," he murmured. "It needs cleaning." His face was close to hers as he worked, and Birdie found herself studying him. His eyes, she realized, were a striking shade of green, flecked with gold around the pupils. A small scar ran through his right eyebrow, and several days' worth of stubble darkened his jaw. "How did you happen to find us?" she asked, partly to distract herself from the pain, partly out of genuine curiosity. "I told you I was heading to Copper Springs," he replied, focusing on his task. "The canyon road is the fastest route, saw the overturned coach and the dust it kicked up." He paused, meeting her eyes. "Good thing I came along when I did. That storm would have made a bad situation worse." As if to emphasize his point, thunder crashed outside and rain lashed against the windows. "Yes," Birdie agreed softly. "Thank you." Xavier finished cleaning her wound, then stepped back, examining his work. "It's not deep," he said. "Should heal clean. You might have a headache for a day or two." "I already do," she admitted. He nodded sympathetically. "Rosa will find you some dry clothes. They might be a bit large, they'll be mine or my sister's, but they'll be warm." "Your sister?" Birdie asked, realizing she knew almost nothing about this man who had rescued them. "Lily," he said. "She lives in town now with her husband, visits sometimes." His expression was unreadable as he added, "It's just me, Rosa, and the ranch hands most days." Before Birdie could respond, Rosa emerged from Martha's room, her expression worried. "The older lady is resting, but her leg is definitely broken. I've done what I can to set it, but she needs the doctor." She looked at Birdie. "Come, Nina, let's get you into something dry." Xavier nodded. "I'll check on the men, make sure everyone's accounted for before the storm gets worse." As he headed for the door, pulling his hat low over his eyes, Birdie found herself watching him, struck by the quiet efficiency with which he handled the crisis. In Boston, the men she knew wore fine suits and spoke of business deals and social engagements. Xavier Quinn was something entirely different, a man shaped by this wild land, as steady and reliable as the mountains that rose in the distance. Rosa led her to another bedroom, this one smaller but just as neat as the rest of the house. She pulled a simple cotton dress from a trunk at the foot of the bed. "This was Lily's," she explained. "She left some things behind when she married. It might be a bit long on you, but we can pin it up." Birdie accepted the dress gratefully. "Thank you, you're very kind." Rosa's weathered face creased in a smile. "Any friend of Zav's is welcome here." "Oh, we're not friends," Birdie hastened to explain. "We only just met when he rescued us." Rosa's eyes twinkled knowingly. "That boy's got a soft heart beneath that tough exterior. Always bringing home strays, injured animals, lost travelers." She patted Birdie's hand. "Get changed. I'll make some coffee to warm you up." Left alone, Birdie removed her ruined traveling dress, wincing as she discovered various bruises from the accident. Her corset had protected her somewhat, but her ribs ached when she breathed deeply. Gratefully, she slipped into the borrowed dress, which was indeed too long but otherwise fit reasonably well. When she emerged, Rosa handed her a steaming cup of coffee and directed her to sit at the kitchen table. Through the window, Birdie could see Xavier in the yard, talking with several men ranch hands, she presumed as the rain continued to pour down. "How long have you worked for Mr. Quinn?" Birdie asked, sipping the strong, hot coffee. "Since he was a boy," Rosa replied, kneading dough for what looked to be biscuits. "I worked for his parents first. When they passed his father in a ranching accident, his mother from influenza, a year later, I stayed on to help raise him and Lily." "That's very sad," Birdie said softly. Rosa nodded. "He was only 16 when his mother died, took over the ranch then, refused to sell even though plenty tried to pressure him, worked harder than men twice his age to keep this place going." Pride was evident in her voice. "Now it's one of the most successful spreads in the territory." The front door opened and Xavier stepped inside, bringing with him the scent of rain and leather. He removed his hat and coat, hanging them on pegs by the door. "Doctor's on his way," he announced. "Should be here within the hour, weather permitting." He accepted the cup of coffee Rosa handed him and sat at the table across from Birdie. "How are you feeling, Miss Ravenwood?" "Better, thank you," she replied. "And please call me Birdie," he nodded. "Birdie." The name sounded different in his deep voice, almost musical. "You can call me Zav." She smiled slightly. "Zav it is." For a moment they sat in companionable silence, sipping their coffee as the storm raged outside. Then Xavier spoke. "I sent 2 of my men to recover your luggage from the coach. They won't be able to get there until the storm passes, but they'll bring everything back here." "That's very kind of you," Birdie said. "I don't know how I'll ever repay your hospitality." He waved away her thanks. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," she said firmly. "Not anyone would have climbed down into an overturned stagecoach to rescue 2 strangers." A hint of color touched his cheeks, and he looked down at his coffee. "Well, you can repay me by telling me what brings a Boston lady to Copper Springs. Teaching, you said." Birdie nodded, grateful for the change of subject. "Yes, the town council wrote that they were desperate for a teacher. Their last one left unexpectedly to get married." "Happens a lot out here," Xavier commented. "Women are in short supply. A single lady doesn't usually stay single long." Birdie felt her own cheeks warm. "Well, I didn't come here looking for a husband. I came to teach." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Fair enough." The sound of hoofbeats outside interrupted their conversation. Xavier rose quickly. "That'll be the doctor." He returned moments later with a middle-aged man carrying a black medical bag. The doctor nodded politely to Birdie before being led to Martha's room. Xavier remained with them while Rosa drew Birdie back to the kitchen. "Let them work," the older woman said kindly. "Are you hungry? You must be after such an ordeal." Birdie suddenly realized she was indeed famished. "Yes, actually, I haven't eaten since breakfast." Rosa set a bowl of hearty stew in front of her along with a thick slice of homemade bread. "Eat. You need your strength." The food was delicious, and Birdie found herself relaxing in the warm kitchen as Rosa moved efficiently around the space, preparing more food for the doctor and Xavier. Outside, the storm continued, but it seemed less threatening now, the thunder more distant. It was nearly an hour later when Xavier and the doctor emerged from Martha's room. The doctor looked tired but satisfied. "She'll be all right," he told Birdie. "The leg is broken, but I've set it properly. She also has a dislocated shoulder which I've put back in place. She'll need several weeks of rest before she can travel again." Birdie's heart sank. Several weeks, but she was only accompanying me to Copper Springs. Her daughter is expecting her in Prescott by the end of the month. The doctor shrugged apologetically. "I'm afraid that's impossible. Moving her now could cause permanent damage to that leg. She needs complete bed rest for at least 3 weeks." Xavier, who had been listening silently, spoke up. "She can stay here. We have the room and Rosa can help care for her." "That's very generous," the doctor said, "but she'll need regular checking. I can't ride out here every day." "Then I'll bring her to town when she's stable enough to be moved," Xavier decided. "She can stay at the hotel there, close to your office." The doctor nodded. "That would work. Give it a week here first, then we'll see." He turned to Birdie. "As for you, young lady, you should take it easy for a day or two. That's quite a knock you took to the head." "I'll be fine," Birdie assured him. "I need to get to Copper Springs. School is supposed to start in 3 days." Xavier frowned. "The town's only 10 miles from here. Once the storm passes, I can take you there myself." "Thank you," Birdie said, relieved. "I hate to impose further, but I would appreciate that." The doctor packed up his bag and accepted a plate of food from Rosa. "I should get back to town before dark. I've left laudanum for Mrs. Holloway. 2 drops every 6 hours for the pain. She's sleeping now." Xavier saw the doctor out, then returned to find Birdie standing uncertainly in the main room. "You should rest too," he told her. "You can use Lily's room." "We moved Mrs. Holloway to the guest room." "I should sit with her," Birdie protested. "Rosa will check on her," Xavier assured her, "and I'll look in on her through the night. You need sleep." Too exhausted to argue further, Birdie nodded. "Wake me if she needs anything." "I promise," he said, his green eyes solemn. Birdie made her way to the small bedroom where she had changed earlier. The bed looked invitingly comfortable, with a patchwork quilt and plump pillows. She slipped beneath the covers, expecting to lie awake despite her exhaustion, thinking about the accident and all that had happened. Instead, she fell asleep almost instantly, lulled by the sound of rain on the roof and the distant murmur of voices from the kitchen. She woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains. For a moment, she was disoriented, forgetting where she was. Then the events of the previous day came rushing back. Sitting up quickly, too quickly, as her head protested with a sharp pain, Birdie looked around for her clothes. Someone had laid them out on a chair, cleaned and dried. After dressing, she made her way to the kitchen where she found Rosa kneading bread dough. "Good morning, Nina," the housekeeper greeted her. "You slept well." "Yes, thank you," Birdie replied. "How is Mrs. Holloway?" "Still sleeping," Rosa said. "The medicine keeps her comfortable. Xav checked on her an hour ago." "And where is Mr. Quinn now?" "Out with the men. A fence came down in the storm. He left word that he'll take you to town this afternoon, once your things arrive from the stagecoach." Birdie felt a mixture of relief and, surprisingly, disappointment. She was eager to reach Copper Springs and begin her new life, but there was something about Xavier Quinn that intrigued her. "Is there anything I can do to help?" she asked. Rosa smiled. "You can keep an old woman company while she works. Tell me about Boston. I've never been further east than Santa Fe." As the morning progressed, Birdie found herself enjoying Rosa's company. The older woman had a wealth of stories about the ranch, the territory, and the Quinn family. Through her tales, Birdie began to build a picture of Xavier, a serious boy who had grown into a responsible man, respected by his workers and neighbors alike. "He works too hard," Rosa confided as they prepared vegetables for the midday meal. "Needs someone to remind him there's more to life than cattle and land." "His sister doesn't visit often?" Birdie asked. Rosa shook her head. "Lily's busy with her own life. She and Xav are close, but she has her husband and baby now, and Xav." She sighed. "He keeps to himself mostly. Goes to town for supplies, attends church on Sundays, but doesn't socialize much." "No special lady friend?" Birdie asked, then blushed at her own boldness. Rosa's eyes twinkled. "Not for lack of trying on the part of every unmarried woman in the county, but no one special." She gave Birdie a considering look. Yet, before Birdie could respond to that loaded statement, the door opened and Xavier himself walked in. He had clearly been working hard. His shirt was damp with sweat and dirt smudged his cheek, but he smiled when he saw Birdie. "You're up. Good. How's the head?" "Much better," she assured him. "Rosa tells me you've been fixing fences." He nodded, pouring water from a pitcher into a basin and washing his hands and face. "Storm did some damage. Nothing serious." He dried himself with a towel, then looked at her more carefully. "You look more rested. Color's back in your cheeks." Birdie felt those cheeks warm at his scrutiny. "I feel almost myself again. Thank you for your hospitality." "You're welcome to stay longer," he said, then added quickly. "Both of you, I mean, until Mrs. Holloway is well enough to travel." "That's very kind," Birdie replied, "but I really should get to Copper Springs. The school board is expecting me, and I'll need time to prepare before classes begin." He nodded, looking almost disappointed. "Of course. My men should be back with your luggage soon. We can leave after the midday meal if that suits you." "That would be perfect," Birdie said. "Thank you." True to his word, Xavier's ranch hands returned shortly before noon, bringing with them the trunks and bags that had been strapped to the stagecoach. Birdie was relieved to find that most of her possessions had survived the accident intact, though one trunk had broken open, and some of her books were water-damaged. "I'll need to replace these," she said, holding up a soggy reader. "The children will need them for lessons." "The general store in Copper Springs should have some," Xavier told her, "or they can order them for you." After a hearty meal, during which Birdie checked on Martha, still sleeping but peaceful, it was time to depart. Xavier had hitched a wagon, explaining that it would be more comfortable for her than riding horseback with her luggage. Rosa embraced Birdie warmly. "You come back and visit," she insisted. "Don't be a stranger." "I'll come check on Mrs. Holloway as soon as I'm settled," Birdie promised. The ride to Copper Springs took just over an hour. Xavier was a comfortable companion, neither too talkative nor too silent. He pointed out landmarks along the way, told her about the town and its inhabitants, and asked thoughtful questions about her teaching experience. "I taught at a small school in Boston for 2 years," Birdie explained. "But it was restrictive. The headmistress had very firm ideas about what young ladies should and should not learn. I wanted more freedom to design my own curriculum." Xavier nodded. "You'll have that here. The school board's main concern is that the children learn their letters and figures. Beyond that, they'll trust your judgment." "That's what I'm hoping for," Birdie said, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. I have so many ideas." He glanced at her, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You really did come out here for the teaching, didn't you? Not because you're running from something or someone back east," Birdie laughed. "Is that what people will think?" "It's a common story," Xavier admitted. "People come west for fresh starts, running from the law, from failed businesses, from broken hearts." "And what about you?" Birdie asked boldly. "Were you running from something when you took over the ranch?" He shook his head. "No, this land has been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather came here in the 1820s when it was still Mexican territory, built the place up from nothing." Pride was evident in his voice. "It's in my blood. I couldn't imagine being anywhere else." As they crested a small hill, the town of Copper Springs came into view. It was larger than Birdie had expected, with several streets of buildings radiating out from a central square. A church steeple rose above the other structures, and she could make out a schoolhouse on the edge of town. "What do you think?" Xavier asked, watching her face. "It's lovely," Birdie said honestly. "So much more substantial than I imagined." "The copper mine brought prosperity," he explained. "It's played out now, but the town survived. Ranching, farming, and trade keep it going." They entered the town proper, and Birdie found herself the object of curious stares from people on the boardwalks. Xavier nodded greetings to several individuals as he guided the wagon toward a 2-story building with a sign proclaiming it the Copper Springs Hotel. "Mrs. Jeffries runs this place," he told Birdie. "She's expecting you. The school board arranged for your room." He pulled the wagon to a stop and jumped down, coming around to help Birdie descend. His hands were strong and steady as they circled her waist, lifting her effortlessly to the ground. For a moment they stood close, his hands lingering at her waist, her own resting lightly on his shoulders. Something flickered in his green eyes, something that made Birdie's breath catch. Then he stepped back, clearing his throat. "Let me get your luggage." A plump, gray-haired woman emerged from the hotel, her face wreathed in smiles. "You must be our new teacher. Welcome, welcome. I'm Eunice Jeffries. We've been so looking forward to meeting you." Birdie smiled, extending her hand. "Birdie Ravenwood. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Jeffries." "Oh, my dear, we heard about the accident," Mrs. Jeffries exclaimed. "Word reached us last night. We were so worried. Thank goodness Mr. Quinn found you." "Yes," Birdie agreed, glancing at Xavier, who was unloading her trunks from the wagon. "I was very fortunate." Mrs. Jeffries lowered her voice conspiratorially. "And quite the handsome rescuer, too. Half the young ladies in town have set their caps for him, but he barely seems to notice." Birdie felt her cheeks warm. "He's been very kind. He and his housekeeper are caring for my traveling companion who was injured in the accident." "Yes, we heard about poor Mrs. Holloway," Mrs. Jeffries nodded. "Dr. Miller told us she'll be laid up for weeks. Such a shame. Well, come in, come in. I've prepared our best room for you." Xavier carried Birdie's trunks up to her room on the 2nd floor, a pleasant, airy space with a view of the town square. Mrs. Jeffries fussed about, showing Birdie the washstand, the armoire, the writing desk by the window. "Meals are served in the dining room downstairs," she explained. "Breakfast from 6 to 8, dinner at noon, supper at 6. If you need anything at all, just ring the bell." When she finally departed, Xavier remained, standing somewhat awkwardly by the door. "Will you be comfortable here?" he asked. "Very much so," Birdie assured him. "It's lovely." He nodded. "Good." He hesitated, then added, "I come into town most Saturdays for supplies. I could bring news of Mrs. Holloway if you'd like." Birdie smiled. "I would appreciate that, and I meant what I said to Rosa. I'll come visit as soon as I'm settled." "You're welcome anytime," Xavier said, his voice warm. He reached for his hat, which he had removed upon entering her room. "I should let you rest. You've had quite an ordeal." "Thank you again," Birdie said softly. "For everything." He paused at the door, looking back at her with those remarkable green eyes. "It was no trouble, Miss Ravenwood." A small smile touched his lips. "Birdie." And then he was gone, his footsteps receding down the hall. Birdie moved to the window, watching as he emerged from the hotel, climbed into his wagon, and drove away. She found herself wondering when Saturday would arrive. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. The chairman of the school board, Mr. Peterson, showed Birdie the schoolhouse and introduced her to several of the town's prominent citizens. She spent hours organizing her classroom, unpacking the books and materials she had brought with her, and creating lesson plans for the diverse group of students she would soon be teaching. The school itself was a single room with rows of desks facing a larger desk and blackboard at the front. Windows lined both sides, providing ample light, and a pot-bellied stove in the corner would provide heat once the weather turned cold. It was simple but functional, and Birdie fell in love with it immediately. "We have 32 students enrolled," Mr. Peterson informed her. "Ages 5 to 16. Some only attend during the winter months when they're not needed for planting or harvest." "I understand," Birdie assured him. "I'll do my best with whatever time I have with them." By Friday evening, Birdie felt prepared for her first day of teaching on Monday. She had arranged the classroom, prepared her lessons, and even visited several of her students' families to introduce herself. The townspeople had been welcoming, if curious about this Eastern lady who had traveled alone to their remote community. Saturday dawned clear and bright. Birdie told herself that she wasn't watching the street for signs of a certain wagon, that her frequent glances out the hotel window were merely to enjoy the view. But when she spotted Xavier's palomino tied outside the general store around midday, her heart gave a little leap. Telling herself that she merely wanted news of Martha, Birdie put on her bonnet and made her way downstairs and across the street to the store. The bell above the door jingled as she entered. Xavier was at the counter, discussing an order with the proprietor. He turned at the sound of the bell and his face brightened when he saw Birdie. "Miss Ravenwood," he said, tipping his hat. "Just the person I was hoping to see." "Mr. Quinn," she replied, unable to keep the smile from her face. "How is Mrs. Holloway?" "Improving," he reported. "She's awake more now and the pain seems to be lessening. Rosa has her eating regular meals and Dr. Miller visited yesterday. He says she's healing well." "That's wonderful news," Birdie said. "Please give her my regards." "Why don't you tell her yourself?" Xavier suggested. "I'm heading back to the ranch after I finish here. You could ride with me, visit for a while, and I'll bring you back before dark." Birdie hesitated only briefly. "I would like that very much." The storekeeper, a round man with a bushy mustache, smiled between them. "Taking our new teacher out to your place, Quinn. Better watch out, folks will talk." Xavier's expression remained neutral. "Miss Ravenwood's traveling companion is recovering at my ranch, Mr. Gilmore. She's merely paying a visit." Mr. Gilmore winked at Birdie. Of course. "Just teasing. You two young people enjoy your ride." Outside, Xavier helped Birdie into the wagon, his touch sending a now familiar warmth through her. "I apologize for Gilmore," he said as he took his seat beside her. "Small towns and their gossip. I'm not concerned," Birdie assured him. "Besides, we're merely friends visiting a mutual acquaintance." Xavier gave her a sidelong glance. "Is that what we are, friends?" Birdie's cheeks warmed. "I'd like to think so." He smiled then, a full smile that transformed his serious face. "I'd like that too." The ride to the ranch seemed shorter this time, filled as it was with comfortable conversation. Xavier told her about his week, a calf born, progress on fence repairs, plans for the upcoming cattle drive. Birdie shared stories of her preparations for school and her impressions of Copper Springs and its inhabitants. At the ranch, Rosa greeted Birdie with a warm hug. "I knew you'd come," she said, eyes twinkling. "Xav has been watching the road all morning." Xavier cleared his throat. "Rosa, why don't you show Miss Ravenwood to Mrs. Holloway while I unload the supplies?" Martha was sitting up in bed when Birdie entered, her leg propped on pillows but her color much improved. "My dear girl," she exclaimed, "how wonderful to see you. Come, sit and tell me everything about Copper Springs." They chatted for nearly an hour, with Birdie recounting her experiences in town and Martha sharing stories of Rosa's excellent nursing and Xavier's frequent visits to check on her. "He's a good man," Martha said, patting Birdie's hand. "Not many would take in strangers and care for them so well." "Yes," Birdie agreed softly. "He is a good man." When she emerged from Martha's room, she found Xavier on the porch, whittling a small piece of wood. He looked up as she joined him, setting aside his project. "How did you find her?" he asked. "Much improved," Birdie said, taking a seat on the bench beside him. "You and Rosa have taken excellent care of her," he shrugged. "It's nothing." "It's not nothing," Birdie insisted. "It's kindness, generosity. Not everyone would do what you've done." Xavier looked at her then, his green eyes serious. "I'd like to think anyone would help someone in need." "Perhaps," Birdie conceded, "but you went above and beyond. You opened your home to us, strangers that we were." He was quiet for a moment, his gaze moving to the distant mountains. "When I first saw that overturned stagecoach, my heart nearly stopped. I was afraid of what I'd find inside." His voice softened. "And then I heard your voice, strong and clear, and I knew at least one passenger had survived." Birdie's throat tightened with emotion. "I'm very glad you were there." "So am I," he said simply. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching as the afternoon light painted the landscape in gold. Rosa called them in for an early supper, and Birdie found herself reluctant when the time came to return to town. "I'll bring you back next Saturday," Xavier promised as they drove back toward Copper Springs. "Or sooner if you'd like." "I would like that," Birdie said, "but I'll be busy with school starting Monday. Perhaps next Saturday would be best," he nodded. "Saturday it is." As the weeks passed, a pattern developed. Birdie threw herself into teaching during the week, quickly coming to love her diverse group of students and the challenges they presented. Saturdays became her favorite day, when Xavier would arrive in town and they would ride out to the ranch together to visit Martha. Martha's recovery progressed steadily. By the third week, she was able to move about on crutches, and Dr. Miller declared that she could be moved to town at the end of the month. Birdie was surprised to find herself disappointed at the news. Her weekly visits to the ranch had become precious to her, a time when she could relax away from the watchful eyes of the townspeople. More than that, she had come to value Xavier's company. During their rides to and from the ranch, they had discussed everything from books to politics, from childhood memories to dreams for the future. He was well read despite his limited formal education, with a quiet intelligence that Birdie found increasingly attractive. One Saturday in early October, almost 6 weeks after the stagecoach accident, Xavier surprised Birdie by suggesting they take a different route to the ranch. "There's something I'd like to show you," he said, turning the wagon onto a narrow trail that wound up into the foothills. "If you don't mind a slight detour." "Not at all," Birdie replied, curious. The trail climbed steadily, offering increasingly spectacular views of the valley below. Finally, Xavier halted the wagon in a small clearing near the edge of a cliff. Below them, the landscape stretched out for miles, the ranch buildings tiny in the distance, the town of Copper Springs barely visible on the horizon. "It's breathtaking," Birdie said softly, accepting Xavier's hand as he helped her down from the wagon. "My father used to bring me up here when I was a boy," he told her, leading her to a large, flat rock near the edge. "Said a man should know his land from all angles." They sat together on the rock, the October sun warm on their faces despite the crisp air. Xavier reached into his pocket and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "I made something for you," he said, suddenly seeming almost shy. "It's not much, but—" He handed her the bundle. Birdie unwrapped it carefully to reveal a small wooden carving of a bird delicately crafted, with feathers etched into the smooth wood. "It's beautiful," she breathed, running a finger over the tiny details. "A little birdie," Xavier said with a smile. "I've been working on it for a while now." Birdie looked up at him, touched beyond words. "Thank you, I'll treasure it." Their eyes met and something shifted between them. Xavier reached out slowly as if giving her time to pull away and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Birdie," he said softly, "I need to tell you something." Her heart beat faster. "Yes, these past weeks, getting to know you." He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "You've come to mean a great deal to me," Birdie's breath caught, "and you to me." He moved closer, his hand gently cupping her cheek. "I never expected to find someone like you. Someone who makes me think, who challenges me, who sees the world with such openness and curiosity." "Xav," she whispered, using the familiar name that had become so natural to her. "May I kiss you?" he asked, his voice low. In answer, Birdie leaned forward, closing the distance between them. His lips met hers gently at first, then with growing confidence as she responded. His arms slipped around her waist, drawing her closer, and Birdie's hands found their way to his shoulders, then into his hair. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Xavier rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks," he admitted. Birdie smiled. "Why did you wait so long?" he chuckled. "I wasn't sure if a refined Boston lady would welcome the attentions of a rough rancher." "This Boston lady most certainly does," Birdie assured him, leaning in for another kiss. They remained on the hillside for some time, talking, kissing, watching the play of light across the valley as the afternoon waned. Finally, Xavier reluctantly pointed out that they should continue to the ranch before it grew too late. "I don't want Rosa to worry," he said, helping Birdie back into the wagon. "And I promised Martha we'd visit today." The ride to the ranch was different now, with Xavier's arm around Birdie's waist, her head occasionally resting on his shoulder. When they arrived, Rosa took one look at them and broke into a knowing smile. "About time," she murmured, ushering them inside. Martha, too, seemed unsurprised by the development. "I've been watching you two circle each other for weeks," she told Birdie when they had a moment alone. "He looks at you the way my late husband used to look at me." Birdie blushed. "It's all very new." "But very right," Martha said confidently. "I can see it in both of you." The news that Martha would be moving to town the following week brought mixed emotions. Birdie was pleased that her friend was well enough to travel but knew that it would mean changes to her and Xavier's routine. "Will you still come out to the ranch?" Xavier asked as they drove back to town that evening, the stars beginning to appear overhead. "If I'm invited," Birdie replied. He pulled the wagon to a stop on a quiet stretch of road, turning to face her. "You'll always be welcome there, Birdie, always." "Then yes," she said, "I'll still come." He kissed her then, a long, tender kiss that left her breathless. "Good," he murmured against her lips, "because I don't think I could bear not seeing you." The following week brought Martha's move to town. Xavier arranged for her to have a comfortable room at the hotel, not far from Birdie's. The doctor pronounced her healing well, and predicted she would be able to travel to Prescott within another few weeks. Life settled into a new pattern. Birdie's days were filled with teaching, her evenings often spent with Martha or preparing lessons. Xavier came to town more frequently now, not just on Saturdays but sometimes midweek as well. They would walk together along the town's streets, dine at the hotel, or simply sit on the hotel's porch, talking until the stars came out. The townspeople noticed, of course. Gossip spread quickly in Copper Springs, and Birdie found herself the subject of curious glances and knowing smiles. Mrs. Jeffries, in particular, seemed delighted by the development. "Never thought I'd see the day Xavier Quinn courted anyone," she confided to Birdie one evening. "That man's been as solitary as they come since I've known him. You must be something special, my dear." Birdie wasn't sure how to respond to such comments. Was Xavier courting her? They hadn't put a name to what was developing between them, but she couldn't deny the deepening of her feelings with each passing day. November brought colder weather and the first dusting of snow to the higher elevations. Xavier's visits became somewhat less frequent as he prepared his ranch for winter, but when he did come to town, he made the most of their time together. One crisp Saturday, after escorting Martha to church, she was now able to walk with just a cane. Xavier suggested a drive. "I need to check on a section of fencing near town," he explained. "Would you like to come along?" Birdie readily agreed, bundling up against the cold. As they drove, she noticed that Xavier seemed preoccupied, responding to her comments with distraction. "Is everything all right?" she finally asked. "You seem troubled." He glanced at her, then back at the road. "Just thinking." They reached a stretch of fencing that looked perfectly intact to Birdie's inexperienced eye. Xavier jumped down from the wagon, inspected the fence briefly, then returned to sit beside her. "Looks fine to me," Birdie commented. Xavier smiled slightly. "I wasn't really concerned about the fence." "Oh," Birdie raised an eyebrow. "Then why are we here?" He took her gloved hand in his. "Because I wanted to speak with you privately, away from prying eyes and ears." Birdie's heart began to race. "What did you want to speak about?" Xavier took a deep breath. "Birdie Ravenwood, these past 2 months have been the happiest of my life. Meeting you even under such difficult circumstances has changed everything for me." "For me too," Birdie said softly. He squeezed her hand. "I know it hasn't been long, and I know that what I'm about to ask might seem rushed by Eastern standards, but out here, life moves at a different pace." He paused, his green eyes intense as they met hers. "I love you, Birdie. I want to build a life with you. Will you marry me?" Though she had begun to suspect where the conversation was heading, Birdie still felt momentarily speechless. Her heart seemed to swell within her chest. "Xav," she finally managed, "are you certain? I'm still so new to this place, to this life." "I've never been more certain of anything," he said firmly. "From the moment I pulled you from that overturned stagecoach, something inside me knew. You're the one I've been waiting for without even knowing I was waiting." Tears pricked at Birdie's eyes. "I love you too, so much." Hope brightened his face. "Is that a yes?" Birdie laughed through her tears. "Yes. Yes, I will marry you, Xavier Quinn." He gathered her in his arms, kissing her with a passion that left no doubt of his feelings. When they finally parted, both breathless and smiling, Xavier reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "It was my mother's," he said, opening it to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a small but perfect diamond. "I had it sized for you in town last week." "It's beautiful," Birdie whispered as he slipped it onto her finger. "Perfect." They returned to town hand in hand, both unable to stop smiling. Martha was the first to notice the ring, letting out a cry of delight that drew the attention of everyone in the hotel dining room. "I knew it," she exclaimed, embracing Birdie. "Oh, my dears, I'm so happy for you both." Word spread quickly through Copper Springs. By Sunday morning, when Xavier proudly escorted Birdie to church, it seemed everyone in town had heard the news. They were met with congratulations and well wishes from all sides. Mr. Peterson, representing the school board, pulled Birdie aside after the service. "We're delighted for you, Miss Ravenwood, truly. But we do hope this doesn't mean we'll be losing our teacher." "Not at all," Birdie assured him. "I intend to continue teaching, even after you're married." He asked, clearly surprised. Xavier, who had joined them, answered firmly. "My future wife has a calling as an educator, Mr. Peterson. I fully support her continuing in that role for as long as she wishes." Birdie squeezed his hand gratefully. They had already discussed this, with Xavier making it clear that he had no intention of asking her to give up the work she loved. "Well, that's progressive of you, Quinn," Mr. Peterson said, looking somewhat bemused. "But as long as you're both satisfied with the arrangement, the board has no objections." The weeks leading up to the wedding were busy ones. Birdie and Xavier decided on a December wedding, just before Christmas. It would be a simple ceremony at the church, followed by a celebration at the ranch. Martha, now fully recovered and preparing for her delayed journey to Prescott, insisted on helping with the preparations. "I may have missed my daughter's confinement," she said cheerfully, "but at least I get to see you two married before I leave." It's as if the stagecoach accident was meant to be. Birdie had written to her family in Boston with the news. Their response was predictably mixed concern about the hastiness of the match, questions about Xavier's background and position, but ultimately, grudging acceptance of her decision. Her mother promised to send a trunk of household linens and wedding gifts, though she regretted that the family could not attend on such short notice. "Are you disappointed?" Xavier asked when Birdie shared the letter with him. "That they won't be here." Birdie considered the question honestly. "A little," she admitted, "but not as much as I might have expected. My life is here now with you." He kissed her forehead. "Still, I wish you could have your family with you on our wedding day." "I'll have you," Birdie said simply. "And Rosa and Martha and all the new friends I've made here. That's family enough." December arrived with a blanket of snow that transformed the landscape into a glistening wonderland. Birdie moved her few possessions from the hotel to the ranch the week before the wedding, staying in Lily's old room while Rosa and several neighboring women helped her prepare her wedding dress, a simple but elegant creation of ivory satin with lace trim. Xavier's sister Lily arrived 3 days before the ceremony, her husband and infant son in tow. She embraced Birdie warmly. "I was beginning to think my brother would never find someone who could put up with his stubborn ways," she teased. "You must be very special indeed." "Or equally stubborn," Birdie replied with a laugh. The wedding day dawned clear and cold, the sun turning the snow-covered landscape into a sea of diamonds. Birdie dressed with Rosa and Lily's help, her heart fluttering with anticipation rather than nerves. "You look beautiful," Martha declared when she arrived at the ranch, brought out by Xavier's foreman in a special trip. "Absolutely radiant." The church was filled to capacity. It seemed every resident of Copper Springs and the surrounding ranches had turned out for the event. Birdie walked down the aisle alone, her eyes fixed on Xavier waiting at the altar. He looked so handsome in his dark suit, his usually unruly hair tamed for the occasion, his green eyes shining with love as she approached. The ceremony was brief, but heartfelt. They exchanged the traditional vows, promising to love, honor, and cherish each other for the rest of their lives. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Xavier gathered Birdie in his arms and kissed her with such tenderness that several of the ladies in the congregation dabbed at their eyes. The celebration at the ranch lasted well into the evening. There was music and dancing, food and drink, laughter and tears of joy. Birdie found herself surrounded by well-wishers, all eager to welcome her into the community as Mrs. Quinn. As the night drew to a close and the last guests departed, Xavier took Birdie's hand and led her away from the main house, toward a small cabin a short distance away. "Where are we going?" she asked, curious. He smiled down at her. "To our home, for tonight at least." I had the hands fix up the old foreman's cabin. I thought we might appreciate some privacy. Birdie's cheeks warmed at his implication, but she squeezed his hand. "That was very thoughtful of you." The cabin was small but cozy, with a fire already burning in the hearth and candles lighting the single room. A large bed dominated one wall, covered with a colorful quilt that Birdie recognized as Rose's handiwork. Xavier closed the door behind them, then turned to Birdie with an expression of wonder. "I can hardly believe you're really my wife," he said softly. "Believe it," Birdie whispered, reaching up to touch his face. "I'm yours as you are mine." He pulled her into his arms then, kissing her with a passion that had been building all day. Birdie responded eagerly, her arms winding around his neck, her body pressing close to his. "I love you, Mrs. Quinn," Xavier murmured against her lips. "And I love you, Mr. Quinn," Birdie replied, her heart overflowing with happiness. Outside, the snow began to fall again, covering their tracks from the main house to the cabin. But inside, wrapped in each other's arms, Birdie and Xavier were warm, safe, and completely, blissfully in love. Spring arrived in a burst of wildflowers and green grass, the harsh winter giving way to renewed life across the valley. Birdie stood on the porch of the ranch house, watching as Xavier worked with a young colt in the corral nearby. 5 months of marriage had only deepened her love for him, each day bringing new discoveries, new joys. She had continued teaching through the winter, riding to town each morning and returning each afternoon, except during the worst storms when she would stay at the hotel. Her students had adjusted quickly to calling her Mrs. Quinn instead of Miss Ravenwood, and the school board had expressed their pleasure with her work. Xavier looked up, catching sight of her on the porch. He waved, then said something to the ranch hand working alongside him and started toward the house. Birdie smiled, watching his approach. How handsome he was, her husband, with his broad shoulders and easy stride. "Taking a break?" he asked as he reached her, leaning down to place a quick kiss on her lips. "Just for a moment," Birdie replied. "I have some news." Xavier's eyebrows rose. "Oh," Birdie took his hand, placing it gently on her still flat stomach. "We're going to have a baby, Xav, in the fall." His eyes widened, then filled with such joy that Birdie felt tears spring to her own. "A baby," he whispered. "We're having a baby," she nodded, laughing as he swept her into his arms, spinning her around on the porch. "Careful," she protested. "I'm in a delicate condition, remember." He set her down immediately, his expression becoming concerned. "Are you feeling well? Should you be resting? Do we need to send for the doctor?" "I'm perfectly fine," Birdie assured him, amused by his sudden protectiveness. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time, you know." Xavier's hand returned to her stomach, wonder in his eyes. "Our child," he said softly. "Our family." Birdie covered his hand with hers. "Yes, our family." That evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, Birdie reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The stagecoach accident that might have ended in tragedy had instead been the beginning of the greatest happiness she had ever known. "What are you thinking about?" Xavier asked, his arm around her shoulders. "About the day we met," Birdie replied. "About how sometimes the worst moments can lead to the best ones." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "If that stagecoach hadn't overturned in the canyon wind, I might never have found you. And you might never have climbed down and carried me out," Birdie added with a smile. Xavier pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Best thing I ever did," he murmured. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Birdie leaned her head on her husband's shoulder, content in the knowledge that their love story, born in danger and uncertainty, would continue to unfold in this wild, beautiful land they called home.